and keep on with the street.
This isn't really even about stop and frisk. It's about his viewpoint. It's about a level of, let's say, racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening. Listen.
95% of your murders and murderers and murder victims fit one MO. They are male, minorities, 15 to 25. That's true in New York, it's true in virtually every city. We put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why we do it? Because that's where all the crime is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
I lived 5 years in Rhode Island, 5 years in California, 2 years in Alabama, 4 years in Georgia. I grew up in Long Island. I've lived in New York. I've been here on this show 24 years from New York. I can tell you it is a fact that people of all races commit crime. Of all races.
45-year-old woman just jogging, homicide. Good Lord.
Police want you to see this video. They say these are alleged gang members hunting down an innocent man in East New York last week. You can see the 21-year-old victim hiding behind an SUV and running through a yard. He jumped a fence trying to get away but got snagged on barbed wire. That's when police say the group caught up with him. One suspect tossing a rock on him, another shot the man several times. It's not clear why he was targeted.
Why'd you kill her?
Police say they found the needle in the haystack, tracking down the man they believe is responsible. 20-year-old Chanel Lewis lived 3.5 miles away from the crime scene with his mother.
Follow-up investigation developed forensic evidence linking him to the crime.
Last year was arrested in New York City after police say he accidentally confessed to the killing.
The strangling murder of 29-year-old nurse Samantha Stewart. The two met on the dating app Tinder.
I am mourning, heartbroken, in pieces.
Samantha's father outraged that police already had Drayton in custody earlier this month for choking his girlfriend, but he was released without bond. 12 days later, Drayton killed his daughter.
How could they release a monster? A monster like that to be roaming the streets, so dangerous.
The arrest making headlines in New York. On the cover of tomorrow's New York Daily News reads, California cops nab psycho tied to murder spree.
Police say 2 career criminals are under arrest tonight for the murder of a man in Hempstead, Long Island. Nassau County investigators say 26-year-old Kadeen Lewis and 33-year-old Richard Ford shot and killed Santos Sanchez during a robbery in November.
Caught on surveillance video happened in broad daylight in the Bronx. Police say 2 people were hit by the gunfire at Walton Park, a teenager and a 47-year-old man.
Racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening.
Is under arrest for the deadly mistaken identity shooting of a 15-year-old boy in Brooklyn. 20-year-old Marshall Amilcar is now facing second-degree murder and weapons charges in the death of Samuel Joseph. He's one of 2 suspects police have been looking for. On February 22nd, Joseph was shot to death in the building on Flatbush Avenue where he lived.
As accused cop shooter Robert Williams faced a judge on attempted murder charges after injuring 2 officers in 2 shootings just hours apart over the
developing story in Harlem where 1 man has died and 2 others are hurt in a shooting. Police say an argument turned violent.
Watch closely as the guy in the red jacket in the center of the screen appears to accidentally bump a man to his
searching for the man who slashed a woman across the face inside a Manhattan subway station. Video shows the attack inside the 125th Street station in East Harlem.
Morning, police are searching for 2 suspects accused of shooting a 19-year-old in the Bronx. Investigators released these images of the suspects, with one of them appearing to hold a gun. Yesterday at about 5 a.m., police say the 2 suspects kicked the victim's door, leading to a physical altercation with the victim, who allegedly told them they had the wrong house.
The worker was shot in the face during an armed robbery in Brooklyn. Surveillance video shows the person with a gun. He demands money when he walks into the bodega in the Brownsville section on January 10th. Now fired 1 shot, hitting the victim above his right eyebrow. The shooter got away with an unknown amount of cash. The bodega worker was treated at the hospital and is expected to be okay.
Racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening.
Say they're searching for a cell phone thief in Midtown. Investigators released these surveillance images of the suspect. The 35-year-old woman says she was standing on the southbound B platform at the 42nd Street subway station last Thursday when a suspect snatched a phone from her hand.
Police are searching for a group of suspects accused of robbing 4 boys in just 1 hour in Harlem. The NYPD released the surveillance video of the young suspects. They say around 6 o'clock last Monday evening, they punched a 17-year-old boy in the mouth and stole his AirPods near St. Nicholas Avenue and East 125th Street. 5 minutes later, police say they grabbed a 12-year-old boy and snatched his AirPods. They're also accused of pulling out a knife and stealing AirPods and cash from 2 other boys near Broadway and East 135th Street.
After duct taping and zip tying the 4 employees. Surveillance photos from a nearby business show 3 men with duffel bags right after the heist.
Racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening.
7 Manhattan robbery attempts, 7 different banks in just 11 days. This is the man police are looking to question, 38-year-old Cornell Nelly. Police say he was successful in at least 4 of those 7 attempts.
Identify a group of armed men who violently stormed a birthday party at an apartment building in Lower Manhattan. Investigators say one suspect hit the 20-year-old host in the face. He then pushed his way inside that apartment. This happened on Sunday. The suspects ransacked the room before running off with clothing and jewelry. The incident happened in a building owned by Saunders, not too far from the New York Stock Exchange.
Racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening.
Dude that just ran by us, that's running by us over and over again. He's running, holding on to his right front pocket on the outside. Ask any cop in America what that means. They will tell you that is reasonable suspicion of stopping him and searching him, because that is the classic giveaway of a dude running with a gun in his pocket. Had he been holding his waistband, same thing. Calling out black people for this enormous violence and dysfunction.
There's so much black on cop violence, harassment, threats, even murder in this country. Black on cop violence, because there's so much of it. There's not just so much violence and even murder, but there's an enormous amount of reporters and public officials who are in denial, deceit, delusion about it. That's why we're breaking out this stuff.
You know what I'm saying? I can kill a nigga right now. I can kill that bitch right there going in here. Going on that hoe. I'll kill that hoe, man.
Racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening.
On this trip, we take you on an all-access ride through the blood-filled housing projects of Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Hey, yo, Brownsville. Who kill? Tuck your shines in. You still, I'm from Rockaway. When me and you got beef, even if that ass live a block away. I'm from Blake and Powell. The same robbed you. See you the next day and scream. Yeah. Welcome to my mother hood. That's what's popping off. Come on then. My mans will be back. You know we get ready to roll something, blow something. Part of the crib.
Lucchese invited us to come and experience one of he and his crew's average but wild out nights in the heart of Brownsville.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
On nights like these, Lucchese keeps the Mossberg 12-gauge pump-action shotgun handy in case of emergency.
New York City, where police have a suspect in custody in the brutal stabbing death of a teenage student. The victim, 18-year-old Tessa Majors, was in her first year at Barnard, the women's college affiliated with Columbia University. The suspect under arrest is 13 years old. 13 years old.
You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 25. That's true in New York, it's true in virtually every city. But that's where all the crime is. That's where all the crime is.
Racial profiling that is repulsive and sickening.
An update on a rape in Laurelton, Queens last month. Police have arrested 53-year-old Michael Hossain. He was taken into custody in Bellingham, Washington. Police say Hossain beat and sexually assaulted a woman on May 30th. The victim escaped by jumping from a second-floor window.
In a Brooklyn rape after an unusual break in the case. 52-year-old Michael Mann is accused of raping and robbing a woman at Knife Point early Tuesday as she got off a J train in Bushwick.
Like, say, for example, if I look at a Michael Brown, St. Michael of Ferguson, that to me, I've never seen anything like that before. But that's not what it's like for you.
Not at all. He's completely, that's the most common personality on the street in black communities.
Well, break it down for us. When you see Michael, as if he walked into your office, that type of person, if he walked into your office, what would you be looking at?
I just know that he's living on impulse. He's got the emotional maturity of a pre-adolescent, 8 to 12 years old. He does not see past his nose in regard to his choices he's going to make. Everything's immediate gratification. Whatever feels good, do it. And if anybody gets in my way, I have to beat them up or I have to harm them. Because on the street, fighting is paramount. The more sadistic, the more brutal, the bigger dude you are, and the better you are.
That's the world he is living in.
That's the world he's living in. Yeah, he's just garden variety. Trayvon Martin, same way.
Break. When you look at him and all the stuff you learned about him, break that down for us.
Same thing. He's living his preferred lifestyle.
This is what we love so much.
Is under arrest for Monday night's attack inside a train that had just arrived at Fulton Street Station. Police say the suspect didn't say a word as he walked up to the boy who was with his mother and punched him in the back.
We begin with an update on that video you first saw here on CBS 2. A woman suddenly shoved into the side of a subway car. We have now learned a suspect is under arrest, and it is not his first time.
The good thing about writing a couple of books, hundreds and hundreds of articles, thousands of videos, many of which feature black on Asian violence and how it's wildly out of proportion and very nasty business. The good thing is I get to put these stories in context. The bad thing is I think I get a little boring saying, I told you so.
But first at 4:30, we have brand new details about a pattern of armed robberies targeting businesses and their owners in Philadelphia. Police believe the same two suspects have broken into 12 storefronts, with the most recent crime happening just this morning. And now detectives are warning a specific community to be vigilant. Action News reporter Chad Perdelli joins us now live from Chinatown with this story. Chad.
Sure, investigators say the criminals are targeting Asian business owners, and in particular, those business owners who live above their commercial establishments. Investigators say these are two of the armed suspects wanted for a dozen home invasion commercial burglaries since May, including Shui Feng Wang's home on the 6000 block of Master. The suspects first broke into Wang's restaurant, then made their way upstairs and startled awake Wang, her husband, and daughter.
Don't touch me and my husband. Okay, I can give you all of my money.
Wang says the suspect struck her and her husband in the head with guns and made off with $3,000 in cash and other valuables. So the bad guys took your camera and your computer.
And then they broke my two cell phones.
They're targeting between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning. The only one that's, of the 12, there's only one that happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Roughly 150 people gathered in Chinatown today to be briefed by police. Investigators believe there are as many as 4 suspects. One has a distinctive tattoo on the back of his neck that may say Felicia. He also has a tattoo that may say 52nd for life on his forearm. The criminals have been seen fleeing the crimes in a 2004 to 2009 silver Nissan Quest and a 2012 black Dodge Caliber.
We're just asking the business owners to please be alert, be aware, try your best to cooperate with these individuals when they come in. Just give them what they want, do not resist, and notify the police right away.
And while many of the victims have either been punched or hit in the head with handguns, no one has been seriously injured.
We begin tonight with an extraordinary interview with an African-American ex-con who admits he targeted Asians. That comes as the Asian community is reacting to a series of attacks that have stoked racial tension. But as our Mike Sugarman found out, these crimes may go beyond race.
We seen them. We decided to just go out and get them, you know. We needed some money for another night at the hotel.
But they were Asian.
They were Asian, once again.
21-year-old Amanzi Emenike talks about robbing Asians like it was no big deal. During his teen years, it wasn't.
We got busted for a hate crime due to the fact of when they linked us to the other robberies that, eventually caught up to us, they were about 75 to 80% Asian.
No Asian. I mean, no one should fear walking on the street in a broad daylight.
But they should have during Amanzi's reign of terror, which ended with his arrest in 2007 at the age of 17. Is he a racist?
Some of my best friends, the closest nearly and dearly to me, is Latino and Asian. I got Asian friends that I'll die for. I got Latino friends that I'll die for.
But Anansi did target Asians because of the perception that they wouldn't fight back, wouldn't go to police because of a language barrier.
We would go somewhere where we know a lot of Asians carry a lot of money, like for a good example, Stonestown. That was a place where we know a lot of Asians came out that mall spending lots of money, so we knew they had something.
What the Eco Center is like this indoor classroom where people...
Amanzi has cleaned up his act after spending time in prison. He's now a video producer at the news agency Youth Outlook, and he offers a unique view of the high-profile black-on-Asian crime recently. A killing in Oakland, attack on a Muni platform, beating of an elderly man.
It makes sense why they would say it was for racial reasons and why they would blow it up to be a racial reason now. It makes a lot of sense.
Well, race did play a part in Amanzi's robberies. His victims were targeted because of race. But for specific reasons, they presented for him a crime of opportunity. We obviously can't tell you about all such crimes, but it does offer a different perspective to the debate. San Francisco's police chief will hold a town meeting tomorrow to talk more about the problems.
Really? Because what's the bottom line after talking to him, do you think?
Well, I really do think it was crimes of opportunity, but it was a racial crime because he was targeting Asians, because he had this perception that they had a lot of money and wouldn't go to police.
And they'd be an easy target.
And they would be an easy target, just like as Latinos, too, would not go to police.
So there's part of the lesson right there.
Yes.
We've both felt the sting of those daily slights throughout our entire lives. The folks who cross the street in fear of their safety.
1 in 3 African American men, if the trends that we see today continue, will spend some time in jail or prison. That is absolutely unacceptable. There is no justification for it. There is no excuse for it. And
I love the way at the beginning of the story how the anchor, Sherry Williams, talks about how a specific community is being targeted. Now, Sherry, is there a specific community that's doing the targeting? Good for the goose, good for the gander, right? Well, I've done dozens and dozens of stories about thousands of cases of black on Asian violence all over the country. In San Francisco, even the Chronicle couldn't ignore it forever. They call black on Asian violence that city's dirty little secret. Up in Rochester, thousands of Asian immigrants from Nepal and Burma were victims of black violence over a couple of year period from the minute they stepped off the plane. I went to Boston once to do an interview with an Asian journalist. She had some kind of cable show that ran nationally. So anyway, we sat down, had a couple of questions, TV show. Then she goes, Colin, I just called Reverend Smith, whoever it was up there in Boston. He says, none of this is happening. What do you think about that? And I said, when I do these shows, I just don't go and say, yeah, it's happening everywhere. No, I give examples, right? They're the ones I just gave you and a lot more. But as soon as she asked that question, I looked at her, she was looking at me, I thought, this interview's will never air. That actually happens surprisingly often. Anyway, so it never happened. The interview never aired. And the story of how black on Asian violence happens all the time. I've done this story in Philly a couple of times. Long-term black people, long-term targeting Asians, either when they leave their stores or targeting them when they leave their casinos. This is a new one, targeting them when they live over their homes. Oh, by the way, thanks, reporter, for telling people there's $3,000 up there. Yeah, good move. Anyway, you know, the first time I ever got on this story of black on Asian violence was really kind of what set me on this road of exposing black violence and denial. It was in South Philly. There was a big story in the paper. 13 Asian kids were taken to the hospital. They'd been beaten up at school. Looked at the paper, South Philadelphia High School. That's a black school. Turns out the Asian students in that school have been beaten and terrorized for years. And then finally, when it got so bad that even the local press and the local public officials couldn't ignore it anymore, the superintendent of schools came out and started whispering to reporters that all this violence was really the fault of the Asian people because they did not know how to talk to the black students without antagonizing them. That's a white girl bleed a lot, and that's one of the worst stories I've ever heard in my whole damn life. It's a story about the Asian kids who suffered an enormous amount of violence, harassment, taunting, threats, all because they didn't know. Don't make the black kids angry. Eliza